Welcome back to another episode of the Forever Game podcast. Today we have Jerrid Sebesta, former NDSU basketball player, former meteorologist in Phoenix, South Dakota, Kare 11, and now he is the marketing person, director of marketing and business development at Taatjes Financial Group here in Wilmer. And I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years just through CEO, and I invited him on to talk about marketing, specifically creating content and messaging and branding a business in outstate Minnesota. I know if you're interested in doing that, you're going to love this episode. Thanks for joining us, Jerrid. I'm going to ask you the opening question that I wanted to start with, which is what you say you're asked by your boss quite a bit, is what do you do here?
I get asked that question a lot, yes. My official title is Director of Marketing and Development at Taatjes Financial Group. I don't have a background in finances. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. But my main job is basically to grow our brand, make sure our messaging is on point, make sure that, really, at the end of the day, it's to make sure that people out in the community know who we are, they know what we're all about, and they know what we stand for. And when time comes where they need financial help, it's a no-brainer that they know where to go, and that they know us long before they ever walk in the door or become a client. At the end of the day, that's my job.
Right, to allow people to form a relationship with Taatjes Financial before they've ever met anyone.
You bet. Really, it's and that's where my background kind of comes into play. Really, at the end of the day, what I do most of the week probably is just basically building content around our business and how that plays into anything that's topical and really adding value. And so it's been kind of an interesting journey of learning kind of what this business is all about. And I think that we're fairly unique. It's not just about money at our firm. And so that's given me some extra ammunition to build content off of. So it's not just purely financials and Social Security and Roth IRAs. That gets pretty stuffy pretty fast. So it's been able to, utilize my broadcasting background to essentially promote and build on our brand of all the things we stand for. So it's fun. It's a fun fit for me.
And I would say most businesses are not just transactional like that. A Roth IRA is basically the same thing at every financial firm. And you guys, you can't stand out by just saying we have the lowest rates. You just won't survive. But when you have a brand you can sell, then you can attract people that will like you anyway. Well,
no offense. Most marketing I see from financial advisors is pretty.
Yes.
It's a little stuffy. And again, I'm lucky. I work at a firm. I'm 41 and I'm the second oldest person on staff of 8 people. So we're fairly young. And the way that we look at the financial world, I think, is a little more broad. So I wouldn't fit at most financial advisors' offices because I'd want to take it more this direction. And again, no disrespect to any other financial firms. I'm already stepping on other people's toes. We're 5 minutes in, I'm already offending people, but that's not the mentality that most financial offices have when it comes to marketing their business. So I wouldn't work at probably 95% of financial offices because
you just wouldn't be a fit, right?
What's that?
You just wouldn't be a fit.
No. And plus I'm grossly tall. And so there's all these things it just wouldn't work. And so that's why it's been really enjoyable experience for me here.
Can we go back to your transition just a little bit? Like from, you completely jumped worlds, Jerrid. So like, how does you talked about the broadcasting impacting what you're doing now, but like, what do you pull from that affects the marketing that you put out? Like that experience.
Yeah, great question. So I did TV weather for 12 years. I worked at 3 stations, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Phoenix, and then the Twin Cities. So I had 12 years of broadcasting experience. When I knew I was going to make the jump out of television, I've got a couple of friends that I would just bounce ideas off of, I mean, I knew I was going to change careers, and didn't really know exactly what that looked like. I would ask I was considering being a realtor. Really didn't know. One of my friends, and who I take his advice, his his suggestions to heart. He's like, you're just a marketer. He's like, that's just kind of what you're naturally good at. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I don't even know what marketers do, but he kind of kept coming back to this. And I think how that plays into how my broadcasting background plays into what I do now is that I made a living just basically connecting with people. Mm-hmm. That's, at the end of the day, I'm a communicator. I was able to communicate a weather forecast via television, 3 minutes every newscast. That was essentially my job, and then social media became big during my TV career. When I first started, there was no social media. This is like pre-MySpace. That's how old I am. And social, I know, it's scary. And once social media came into the scene, if you know me, I tend to be a little sarcastic and maybe a little rough around the edges. So I took all that sarcasm, right? I took all that sarcasm to Twitter when Twitter became kind of the big thing. Yep. And ended up growing a fairly sizable audience that really just enjoyed following my shenanigans. And again, I did the opposite of what the old school way of doing it was. You need to be the most accurate professional on TV. We would have these people that would come in, consultants. I can't even imagine how much money these companies would pay with consultants, and they would sit down with us weather folks and all the people. And I remember them specifically, one of them saying, the reason people watch you at the end of the day, because of all of our research that we have spent all this time doing, is because you are the most accurate. People want accuracy. And I was like, I actually disagree, which they didn't really care for. I said, I think they'll watch us. People have so many options now that if you're not, I just don't believe that. I think that it's like infotainment. They kind of want some information, but they kind of want to be entertained. And so I made a living off of entertaining people with sarcasm and just how silly meteorology in general kind of is. I've gone on the air, and this is during one of the weeks when we had consultants in town, and I got to the 7-day forecast, and there was like snow on day 4. And my co-anchor asked me, she's like, Jerrid, it looks like you got some snow on the forecast for next Tuesday. What are you thinking already? And I'm like, Julie, we can't figure out what's going to happen tonight 70% of the time. So if you're going to pin me to snow totals on next Tuesday, you're going to have to wait 4 days. And she's like, okay, Jerrid, thank you so much. And so anyways, now, right, get out, and I could watch all these consultants, their heads exploding. And so anyways, I just basically then took that and applied it to here. I can't do the sarcasm. Sarcasm in the financial world doesn't fit. But essentially, it's the same rules. It's engaging, it's communicating, it's finding a way other than just kind of the quote unquote norm to connect with people. So that's kind of been how I've been able to make the transition. My boss took a huge risk, but I think he understood, kind of what I was good at and how we could apply it. So it's not a typical move for a lot of financial advisors to hire ex-TV guys.
Well, and but I think as time goes on, it's going to seem more and more normal. Like 3 years from now, it'll seem more normal. How many people are on that team?
8 total.
So there's 8 people at a financial firm in outstate Minnesota, and one of them basically makes content all day, every day. I think that's going to be more normal than I hope it becomes more normal in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, and I think that's what small businesses need to understand. I'm not just a marketer here. I mean, it's a little bit more than that. Obviously, we live in a small community, so it's not just doing a Facebook post and writing a blog. It's being an ambassador for the company. It's going out and really trying to find business and develop relationships. So there's certainly more to that. But I think that there's something to be said, and a lot of small companies just don't have the bandwidth to bring on a marketing person, and they probably don't have the bandwidth to bring on a broadcaster. Because I honestly, like, if you take a look at people that are leaving television that have expertise in communication and broadcasting, I mean, these people know video, they know audio, they know radio, they probably know all these spaces. Think of how much value you could bring a company.
No kidding.
And that's kind of, I think that's a really, really good fit. And there's a lot of people that, just kind of transition out of news. And man, you actually have a lot of skills. I mean, I would kind of joke. I'm like, I have a meteorology degree. Like, there's a reason why BS is in front of it. It's a Bachelor of Science degree. So on my resume, it says BS in atmospheric science, which I think is ironic. And but that degree in and of itself isn't worth a lot. But again, the skills of communicating, engaging,
connecting, yeah,
right, is huge. And so that's kind of the mindset I wish more companies would see the value in that.
Right. Instead of just focusing on selling their stuff, transactional, or, hey, we exist with a jingle on the radio, something with a little more depth.
Exactly. And again, no disrespect to most business owners, a plumber doesn't know how to do that.
Right.
A person who owns a mechanic shop doesn't know how to do that. And it's tough. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for small businesses is they don't have the bandwidth to hire a marketer, and they have no idea about broadcasting. It's just not their expertise. And so it's small businesses in rural areas are in a really tough spot. They know the need for it, but to get it and implement it is it's a tough chasm to get over.
Right. And what I think will happen is eventually someone will and do it well, and then it will start to spread within industries.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think this is just, I think what we're trying to do in the financial world, I think, is a great example of that, because the financial world is a really, most of the people in it are older. And so they have an older school, train of thought. I mean, that's no disrespect to them. That's just the nature of the business, And so when we started like doing podcasts and stuff, now we have a thing called compliance in the financial world, which I'd never heard of before. We're highly regulated, which television was not. And so that was kind of a tough bump for me to get over. But when we started doing radio and started doing podcasts, I would have to call literally our head of compliance, and I'd be like, well, here's what we want to do. What's the answer? Can we do it? Yes or no? Just give me an answer. And their answer, this is now 3-4 years ago, was, I don't have any idea, because nobody's ever asked that question before.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, and now,
like, perfect, click.
That's my answer.
Right. I mean, they didn't say no, so I guess let's do it, and, but I think it's becoming more common, but it's been it's a pretty slow curve in businesses like this. So that's yet another challenge to have in a smaller town, small business, small community.
You mentioned a mentor. What kind of role has mentorship been for you? And how have those come and gone in your life? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's been important. I've been mentored, I guess, like intentionally a little bit, right? Especially at the beginning. I mean, I was a 23-year-old kid in TV, and I'll never forget right before my very first show, going on live television, which I'd never been on live television before, which probably should be illegal. There should be like a break-in process for people.
Practice runs?
Like record them a little bit, do recorded hits before you give like a 23-year-old kid like live television experience, which is insane. But I remember before I went on, the anchor, who is probably 20 years in the business at the time, he said, Jerrid, he goes, even if you have no idea what you're talking about, just pretend like you do, and nobody out there will know the difference. And I kid you not, I have never forgotten that. I've always remembered that. And it's not a fake it till you make it mentality, but there is some level of truth to that. I do a fair amount of speaking. I have been thrown to the wolves so many times in front of hundreds of people, and we have massive, IT breakdowns, and the mics going in and out, and the screens don't work, and my clicker freezes up, and my PowerPoint goes black. Yeah. And you have literally just got, and inside you're going, oh my gosh, I just want to go and curl up in the corner. And, you just say, let's keep rolling and pretend and put a smile on my face. And afterwards I'll apologize to the people and be like, man, I can't believe that happened. I'm really sorry. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? So, there have been those people that have given me those little nuggets of advice that have really helped me through. And, it especially was important through the TV biz because it's just kind of a rough, every 3 years you had to renegotiate a contract and dealing with management. And so that was important. I really enjoy now taking that and then mentoring other kids. As you know, Tyler, like I thoroughly enjoy working with high school kids. Up until maybe a year or two ago, I always had like 4 or 5 younger guys and gals that are in the TV biz and kind of help them navigate through that. So it's been important to me. I wish I probably should have taken that more intentionally to have an actual mentor, but I ask a lot of questions, and I'm a talkative guy. So if I get somebody who's farther down the ranks than me, I have no problem making a phone call or picking somebody's brain and asking a lot of questions.
Right.
Well, I have a question. Kind of getting back a little bit more to the marketing side of Taatjes, Jerrid, but like in my head, I'm trying to think through. It's kind of funny because like progressive marketing and financial just like don't go together for me. I think your guys' approach is so unique. You just don't see a lot of financial firms utilizing the strategies that you do to build brands. So I'm curious if you could share your thought process around that and some of the ways that you like approach building a brand for a business. It doesn't have to speak directly to financial, but obviously that's where you live.
Sure.
So
yeah, and again, in the defense of most financial firms, and there are some that are out there that are doing it very well, and I watch those people really closely, and I think that's kind of important too. Part of my daily routine is to see what are they doing and saying. So
I like that.
I'm always kind of keeping an eye, and it's not just on our competition, which, by the way, full disclosure, I watch them too. Mm-hmm. And I think that not to compare and whatnot, but any business, I want to be watching people that are doing it very well. I'm going to watch my competition. What are they saying? What are they doing? Again, not to emulate or copy, but I always want to have that in the back of my head. Yeah. The very first thing I did when I got here, by the way, I had no idea. I don't even know how a financial firm works. You could argue, I've been here for 6 years. I still don't know exactly how a financial firm. But the first thing I did is I walked them through an exercise through a book. Oh, here it is.
Ooh, a book?
Yeah. I read this book, and there's a specific set of questions and exercises that this guy goes through. This is a book called Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. And if you can see this, he's wearing this is like straight from the 90s. And but very interesting book. And he talks about branding in there and some other things. But I kind of walked through this understanding who we are notion. And I remember sitting down very specifically with our team, and I was like, we spent an hour a week and just kind of went through this. And I'm like, what do we do? Who are we? What do we do really well? What don't we do really well? What sets us apart from every other company in the region? What does our competition do very well? And just went through all of these exercises. One of the most probably important questions that you can ask yourself is, what is the most what's the word I'm looking for? Differentiating. Yes. What is our main differentiator that sets us apart from our competition?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go through these exercises and you really write down with your team, name a reason why someone would do business with us. And it could be anything. It could be people like the color of our logo. People like where we're located. People like but like get into the crux of your business. I mean, and your list should be no less than 20 or 30 lines long. But you come up with that list, which we did, and we narrowed it down to what is the one that no one else can say in our business in this region. And that exercise took many hours.
Yeah.
And we cut it down to about 2 or 3. And we went back and forth and just kind of duked it out amongst our team, and we picked one. And so that became the basis by which all the content that we make and everything that we say and everything that we do and how we interact with our clients and our brand online is based off of that differentiator that we came up with in that first couple of months that I was here. And so I always remember try to keep that in mind whenever we build content and what we do. And again, the things that we support and all those things.
It serves as the guiding light for everything, pretty much.
Yeah, and when I get a chance to go and just talk about business and whatever, the first question I'm going to pose to anybody is figure out who you are. And I've got probably several theories, none of which are backed up by any scientific study, but I would say a lot of businesses don't have any idea what they are or who they are. It's not what they do. We all know what they do, but who are you? And that's a very
and why do you do it?
And why do you do it? That goes for individuals, by the way, but it certainly goes for business. And if you can get to the crux of that, which again sounds like an easy question, but if you can get to the crux of that, then you can start building a brand, and then your content from your marketing builds off of your brand. I think so many people, they don't consider that question. They just go right to Facebook and just start shooting a video and writing a blog, which obviously we're not against all that. But otherwise, if you just do that, you're just throwing darts at the wall.
Right.
But when you can kind of hone in on who you are, then that gives you certainly a guide, like you said, and that's where you have to start. And that's exactly where we started when I joined. And I would say it was really even good for my boss. He was just like, it was just really a good exercise to go through to kind of, re-solidify what are we doing here.
Right. Because when you say, why do people do business with us? And then it really gets you into who does business with us and why do they. I would imagine trust has to be one of the top things for a financial firm. You're holding people's future, their monetary future in their in your hands. And so trust is crucial. And the cool thing to do when you're making content and putting it out there is you can build trust with people that you've never met.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to come up with the question, who are we? What do we do very well? And then another leg of that is really, who is our client? Yes. And as and you know this, like every piece of content should be going to those people or that person, literally. And the financial world is very different. I always compare it to like Stacy's Nursery, for example. Stacy's Nursery is just that. It's a nursery in town here. And they could throw an Instagram post right now and say, hey, because it's, whatever day, or it's just a random Thursday, we're going to do, 50% off of such and such flowers today till 5:00. Bam, post, and they'll have people in the door within a half an hour.
Yep.
Well, financial world doesn't work that way. When you talk about the number of touches needed to build that trust, I've heard the number 7 getting thrown around, or 11. What do you guys? What's kind of the standard rule?
Yeah, I've heard the 7 number.
In that ballpark, your sales funnel, so to speak, is very long.
Long, yes. And when somebody calls us to just have a meeting, an initial prospecting meeting, one of the questions that will get asked either right away on the phone or when they get in the door is, how'd you hear about us? And it's never just one thing. It is, we saw the bill. It's always 3 or 4 things of that 30, that list of 30 we came up with 6 years ago. But It's never one thing. It's never, wow, I heard you on the radio, so we decided to come in. It's, we drive past you every day. We've known fill in the blank person on your team for many years. Yeah. Something happened a couple of years ago when we heard something on the radio. I follow you. it's usually 3 to 6 things.
Yeah.
Which
it's like they go through I just thought of this. They go through like the whole dating process. Well, it's like the first date, they saw the billboard. The second date, they had a friend that worked at Taatjes, and you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, we have this relationship that I didn't even realize, but it's all of the pieces coming together to then lead to it.
That relationship's probably 3+ years long.
Right. Yeah.
It's a long time. And of course, you got to think most people at any given time, how many people right now either need a financial advisor or are looking to change financial advisors? Low, So again, if my boss hired me with the expectation of like, okay, we're going to bring you on for a year. And if our assets under management don't increase by 25% after a year, you're gone. Well, that's just in this world is not going to work. And so again, that's why it's been really nice. We understand that this is a lengthy process. Branding and marketing in this field is very long, but that doesn't mean that your cadence by which you put out content should be very long either.
Right.
I mean, it is crucial. It's almost maybe even more crucial that the cadence by which you market needs to keep up with really the world, which is
I think it's for the rest of the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me, so one of the things people try to do, I think, is when they're trying to build their brand, is steal the credibility of another brand or someone else's brand inside of their industry. Tell me the bourbon story.
Oh, jeez.
the bourbon, the actual bourbon story with the skateboard.
Yep.
Okay, that's a great story. I like telling it. This
is a brand play. I mean, 100%. You know, I mean.
Yeah. So one facets of our brand is Repurposed. It's a book my boss wrote back in 2000. We launched it back in 2017, and it has become kind of its own beast. But looking back, this was kind of the foundation of the Repurposed section of who we are, was launching this book. And with any book that you write, if you do it with a publisher, especially, they're going to ask you, like, we got to get some names on this thing. You've got to get some recommendations. And we were told by our publisher, they're like, who would you like to write a recommendation for your book? You know, and the reality is we live in West Central Minnesota. I'm like, who in the world are we going to get? And our publisher was very adamant. He just says, who's your white unicorn? Well, we've been endorsed by Dave Ramsey for 10 plus years. We believe in his mentality towards finances and personal finances. And I mean, Dave Ramsey would be our white unicorn. Absolutely. But we know, he's only endorsing books by Seth Godin, Patrick Lencioni. Why in the world would he ever even consider? And I mean, we have to just put ourselves in his shoes. How many books is he getting sent a day to endorse? I mean, he probably has a person just to go through those, or he doesn't even do them anyway unless he's a personal friend and already like a top 10 author of the time anyway. Well, we heard through the grapevine that Dave Ramsey down in Nashville, Tennessee, likes to drink a little bourbon. Okay, so
who doesn't?
Now, he's not very vocal about that, but we learned that. And the book was called Repurpose, where it's really, you are a certain person for 40 plus years in your career, and when you retire, it's not that all goes away. You just need to you kind of need to repurpose yourself. And so we're like, we're going to send Dave Ramsey a transcript of our book. But if you just send him a transcript in an envelope, I'm sure it's going to go in the garbage immediately. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, we got to get this guy's attention. So we bought an expensive bottle of bourbon, and then we went to find something that was repurposed. And so we went online and we just looked at people who were repurposing different types of woods, and you'd find all sorts of things. There'd be like chess or checkerboards that were made of repurposed wood or other repurposed items. And my boss came across this skateboard, a company in California that repurposes bourbon barrels, and they make stuff out of old bourbon barrels, and one of which is a skateboard. And so we purchased this giganto skateboard made out of used bourbon barrels. I mean, the thing weighs like 30 pounds.
I was going to say, that thing is thick.
As you can imagine, it's 3 feet long. And then we've got this expensive bottle of bourbon, and we stuffed it in a bag or in a box, huge box. So it was half the size of a desk. And then we printed out the manuscript of his book on a repurposed paper and wrapped it up in this cool kind of country Joanna Gaines twine, and sent it to Dave Ramsey. And
not a cheap shipment.
It wasn't cheap. And so when we shipped it, we got a tracking number. I knew exactly when it was going to arrive on his doorstep. I instantly got an email when it was dropped off at deliveries. As soon as I got that email, I got on the phone and I called Dave Ramsey's team and I said, hey, I need to get to shipping and receiving. And they're like, yep, hold. And so I got some person on the line and I said, you just received a massive box from us. First of all, it's not a bomb. Like there's a very special gift in there from Dave Ramsey, blah, 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 blah. I just need you to just make sure he sees that. Sure. Well, 2 weeks goes by, and this is like over the Christmas break and the New Year's Eve break. And 2 or 3 weeks goes by, and we didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden, we got a call from our Dave Ramsey rep, and he said that Dave got his bourbon, he got the skateboard, he saw the manuscript, and he would love to endorse it. So we actually got Dave Ramsey's endorsement on our book, and so that's the bourbon story. So it was, and again, having his endorsement on the book was phenomenal because we are branded very well as one of the Dave Ramsey, firms in this area. So there was a very methodical thought process that went through getting his name on our book. It wasn't just to get a big name; it was to get a big name that would also help solidify our brand, because that's a big one. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The fact that we're tied with Dave Ramsey here has done very well for us. And people like Dave Ramsey, which there's a lot of them, like us, because we have the same values and we look at life very similarly. And so to have his name on that book was a huge win for us. But that's how we did it.
I think it's important to know for people that haven't heard that story is that this was like a shot over the rainbow. It wasn't like, we're going to do this, it's going to work. This was like, it's worth a shot in the dark.
Yeah, it was the risk was worth it because there was this little financial risk at buying these things and shipping them there. But it's kind of funny because we've chatted, mind you, they're companies like 1,000+ people. So not everybody knows exactly what Dave Ramsey does and what books he's endorsed. So we've got relationships with other people in Ramsey Solutions.
Yeah.
And, we'll see those people at conferences, or for some reason we have to call them on the phone, or I want to try to get Chris Hogan like on my podcast. Well, I'll start it with, hey, I'm Jerrid Sebesta from Taatjes Financial Group. Dave Ramsey actually endorsed our book back in 2017. We now do a podcast. I mean, that's how I start the conversation. And their response is, Dave Ramsey doesn't endorse books anymore. I kid you not. Like, I get that half the time from people on his team. And they're like, well, who are you? And I'll say, well, because they're thinking, again, Seth Godin, Patrick Lencioni, Michael Hyatt. These are only the people that he endorses. And so even people on his team are kind of like, okay, sure you did, and when we got it, and so, but if we hadn't sent them the bourbon and all that stuff and made it special, I don't think it would have happened.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the strategic way you went about it and the creativity that was behind it kind of speaks to your mindset at Taatjes too. Like, that would have never probably landed anywhere, like you said, if it was done normally or like expected in the expectant way.
Yep.
But there's a lot of creativity behind it and thoughtfulness.
It was, and we all know. I mean, it helps to be connected with big folks, with bigger names, and so, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That was a marketing tactic that we took, but we took a risk and it paid off.
Right, and it aligns with the value, so it was definitely a win. When you, I want to kind of ask. I think a lot of people that are, especially in this time right now, are thinking about their ability to change careers, or maybe their ability to be a little more self-sufficient, whether it's like a side hustle or something like that. Can we just talk about, or can we hear your story about how you were able to actually change careers before you had a career picked?
Yeah, I don't recommend what I did.
Well, you could do it because you did the right thing beforehand, right?
Right. Well, it comes down to really answering two questions: why and how. You've got to, if you're going to change careers, you have to understand why. I've always felt good that whenever I've changed jobs or careers, it was done with the mentality of I want to go to something bigger and better. It wasn't that I'm running away from something, and I think that was big. By the way, when I took my job from Phoenix to Kare 11 back in 2010, after my very last show, the anchor, Bram Resnick, who's still on KPNX in Phoenix, he put his arm around me. He's like, hey, congratulations, best of luck in Minneapolis. And he said, and by the way, this is right after the recession, so we were still kind of like coming out of the recession of 2008, 2009. This was right at the end of 2009. He goes, and like people were just flocking out of television, as they were with a lot of companies in general. It was just a weird time. And he goes, you're one of the few people, in fact, you may be the only person I know that's left here in the last 5 years that's actually going to something because that is what they want to do. It's not like they're just trying to run to get away from this place.
Yeah.
So I think if I've done anything well, and I give my wife a lot of credit for this, if we've done anything well, I think we have a fair amount of self-awareness, as we're very intentional over what we're trying to do with our life. I always come back to a conversation my wife and I have. It's probably probably the conversation we've had the most in our life, is where we just kind of daydream. We kind of call it the magic wand conversation. If we could just magically wave a magic wand, what would be the ideal life, ideal job? And I'm not talking money and career, but just life in general. And we've been very good about having that job, having that conversation a lot. It was pretty apparent when I was doing television in the Twin Cities. It was a great job, and by the society standards, it was a dream job. I mean, I was at Kare 11 of all places, and I mean, my online audience was growing, my personal brand was growing. I mean, I'm getting paid to play. I mean, I was getting paid to go do fun events. I was getting paid to host events. I was getting paid to go play basketball at the Harlem Globetrotters. These were all things that I was paid to do. Why would any idiot give that up? But it was pretty apparent, I think, especially that last year that I was doing television, that like, this is just not what we want anymore. As my TV career was growing, it was taking us further away from what we wanted. And what we wanted was a quieter, simpler, more, basically a more normal life. Mm-hmm. And the antithesis of normal was doing weekends in TV in a big city. And while some people want that, it wasn't really what we wanted. And so I boil all of that down into your why. What do you want and why do you want it? So that goes first and foremost before any job change. The second question you have to answer is the how. And the how is the financial part. The how is what's going to give you the ability to go do it. It's important that you have your why and your how, but you've got both of those have to come into play at different capacities. My wife and I, again, are Dave Ramsey people. We've been Dave Ramsey people since 2007. So most of my TV career, in fact, all of our marriage was, the first thing we did was pay off debt and save money and live way below our means and just keep a very simplistic lifestyle, which gave us a lot of freedom and mobility. And you could never forecast the doors that were open, but my wife always wanted to be in a position. So if a door did open, we were in a position to go. Yeah. And that's exactly our story from going to Phoenix to Kare 11. A lot of people don't know this. I actually took a 27% pay cut to go to Kare 11. And I didn't want that, but I took it willingly because we could. And it was getting us closer to our why at that time, which was I want to get closer to home. We're both from Minnesota and start a family. And so it was a no-brainer. But if we hadn't established our how, I couldn't have afforded to take a 27% pay cut. I would still be in Phoenix, Arizona. See my point? And so while I was at Kare 11 for 4 years, we did the same thing. We started the family. Emily was able to work less and less and less. Our combined income went down, which was fine because we were able to withstand that. But at the end of the day, we were always positioned. So if and when a job change came or a career change came, which it did, we could willingly take it. So when I left, not only was I at the height of my career, besides wanting to go west, I had no job and I really didn't know where I was going to get my next paycheck. And so we had established a very strong how. And the week after my final show at Kare 11, I was actually offered 2 jobs in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, one of which was in media. And I turned them both down. And they both thought I was crazy. In fact, that's what one of them said. They handed me a contract, and I came in the next day, and they were fully expecting me to come to them with a signed contract. And I said, with all due respect, this is just not the right fit at the right time. And the news director was like, "Are you serious? Like you are literally unemployed. Oh, and by the way, my wife was pregnant with her 3rd kid." And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, it's just not my thing yet. And so really my job here at Taatjes Financial took 6 months, and being 6 months without a paycheck and employment wasn't a problem because we had oriented our life in such a way. We had established a very strong how, so I could take the right position, not just a paycheck. And that's a big differentiator. Mm-hmm. And so if people are considering changing careers or starting a small business, now might not be the door might not be open just yet, but I'm a proactive guy. I hate waiting for the inevitable universe to come around with a mythical door to open. I don't want to just sit at my email and just wait for that opportunity to come. I want to do stuff today. What can I do today to start preparing myself for that day if it comes, which it may be tomorrow? That opportunity may come in a year. I don't know. And that's why I preach the how so hard. Get out of debt, save, live way below your means, be very smart and very conservative financially. And so if and when that opportunity comes to open the business, to change a job, to change a career, then you go. and you take it and you feel good about it.
Right.
I
Yeah, I think Jamie, you and Micah do that same sort of thing where you were able, you guys live pretty conservatively. The Kia, she's still kicking.
Yes, we followed the same type of mentality for sure. And I was thinking in my head, there was no way if we wouldn't have done that I would have felt comfortable leaving my last job and doing what I'm doing now. So it's so true. You set yourself up for that for sure.
It takes the pressure. Sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead. Go.
Even when you do change careers or start a business, now it takes the pressure off of just trying to make money.
Yeah.
Because that is just then you make bad decisions. Now you're making decisions purely financial because we just have to create a profit and I got to get a paycheck.
Yep.
And, boy, wouldn't it be nice if you started a small business and you didn't need to take a paycheck for a year? Well, now we could actually just build it the way it needs to get built and take the right opportunities, not just because this thing is going to get me a quick shot income.
Right.
Pretty relatable for Tyler.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm an American consumer to the core. I mean, I was showing you my drone when you came on here. We were not that way. And so what it looked like for me was it looked like keeping my full-time job and then working 9 p.m. to midnight or 1 a.m. building a business for 2 years I haven't paid myself $1. And so it's now to a point where I can resign the main job because we're so healthy that we can. And if all of the business dried up, Jamie and I would still have a job for 6 months. And hopefully that doesn't happen where we get fired 6 times in 1 week. But at least I feel part of me is a little scared because it's unknown. You just don't know what could happen. But what could happen worse than what's happening right now? I can't really imagine that.
Some people ask me, they say, how much money do I need to have in the bank before I quit my job and take the jump? Well, with any other question, it depends, And so I kind of look at it like this, that it's a balance of your why and your how. Take a look at my situation. When I left, I had 2 kids, one on the way, right? And I was jumping completely into the unknown and there was no job waiting for me.
Right.
Therefore, my how had to be higher. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My cash in the bank needed to be higher. And my wife and I, for 8 years prior to this point, spent 8 years building that. So that gave me the confidence and the kind of nonchalantness, because I think that's what shocked people when I left, is that I was excruciatingly nonchalant. Where I just was like, and they're like, where are you going to get your next job? Don't know. And I'm like, well, are you going to file for unemployment? Nope. Why? I'm going to go play in the sand. I'm going to go see what's out there, And so, again, if you, in a perfect world, you make that transition, you do both, and you can just kind of, transition over, and it's just kind of this nice, smooth move. At that point, you probably don't need to have your how established quite as strongly as I did, but I needed to have that. So It's kind of this delicate balance between your why and your how. You quit your job today and have no idea what you want to do and not even sure of who you are, and you don't have your how established. You're gonna bomb. Don't do that. It would be better for you to work at a job that you hate and give it a year. And say, hey, I'm going to give this thing a year. For a year, I'm going to save money like crazy and pay off all of my debt as much as I possibly can, and I'm going to work as many connections as I possibly can. And then you'll start to kind of gauge, okay, where am I? Where I've established enough why and enough how to where I can actually make that jump. Not to pump up any more Dave Ramsey stuff here, but Ken Coleman wrote a book called Proximity Principle. Ken Coleman's on Dave Ramsey's team, and I've talked to him on our podcast, and he brings some really interesting light to this topic. He talks about proximity, like getting in close proximity of certain people, and I'm like, I wouldn't have called it that, but that's kind of what I've always done. Is I've always, long before I left Kare 11, man. I mean, when I knew it was the end, that last 6 to 10 months before my final show, behind closed doors, I'm calling all of my contacts and not being like, dude, like, how can you hook me up? It's like, hey, probably next June, it's a pretty good chance I'm gonna resign. Here's what I'm looking to do. Here's what I really enjoy doing. I think your company is really cool. How could I ever be a fit? How could I ever add value? Just have those conversations and try to get as close to them as I could. before I needed, before that day came.
Is that Ask Jerrid how you connected with Ben? Ben, right? Is your boss?
Yeah. He actually connected with me, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Okay.
But
Different story.
He reached out to me, but it was still, I had to take it into consideration, and the real quick story of that is that he reached out to me, and of course, as soon as I got his email, the first thing I did is I just went online, I searched Taatjes Financial Group, and right away I saw he was a Dave Ramsey endorsed guy. So I was like, well, right off the bat, I know we're seeing eye to eye, probably on a lot of topics. And so we chatted, I think 2 days later on the phone. And I'm kind of a no BS, kind of just get to the point guy. And I think within 30 seconds on the phone, I said, here's the deal, Ben. I go, frankly, I find retirement planning, if I have to be frank with you, kind of boring. Like it doesn't turn my crank. I'm not disinterested in it, but it's not my passion. But I go, what I am passionate about is helping people with their life purpose. I love Dave Ramsey. I've got a broadcasting background, so I love to teach and preach this message. And so I said, if you're asking me to be an advisor in Wilmer, that ain't going to happen. I mean, that conversation happened within the first 2 minutes of our conversation. And he said, well, the reason I called you is because I'm trying to build a business that's focused more on changing lives, not just building assets. And I think you could be a guy that we could partner with, and you could be that guy. I was like, interesting. And, again, that fit my why, because that's, dude, I can remember years ago, I remember my wife during one of these magic wand conversations, I remember she asked me, she's like, if you could do anything, what would it be? I was like, if I could get paid somehow, I don't think this exists and will ever exist. If I could get paid just to help people with life and money, wouldn't that be sweet? Isn't that interesting? Then probably a decade later, that actually came to fruition.
Right.
But it took that understanding. And again, this connects to small business. If you don't understand who you are, forget marketing, forget brand building, content creation. I mean, you literally have to start at the beginning. So long before I ever left my TV career, I think I had a pretty strong awareness as to who I was, what I was all about, what I stood for, and what I was good at.
That's awesome. A lot of people are taking to social media to voice their opinion politically, which has always been a no-no, but now they're convinced they're right, which makes it even worse. And what kind of advice would you give to those people that they feel compelled to say something because they feel they're compelled to their right, regardless of which side they're on? What would you say to those people?
It's very slippery slope. It's for some reason, when we get in these weird times in life, everybody's got an opinion. And I always remember that statement, everybody's got one, but not everybody wants to hear it. I think that holds true on social media, even though many people don't follow that. It's like social media has given everybody now a platform to state their opinion. And which honestly, it's a free country, so we can do that. Now, how does that play into marketing and small business? Boy, I mean, that's a really, really slippery slope. I think the biggest advice I could give to people is just stick to the script. And I've had to do that with my mentality. If you know me, I have very strong beliefs. I have very strong opinions. I'm very opinionated. I'll be the first to admit that. I have very strong opinions politically. And I have brought things to the table and said, hey, what if we interviewed this person? What if we started a conversation about this? And use radio or podcasting to have that conversation. And my boss, he nailed it. He said, Ben said, he's like, I think we just got to stick to the script. We are a retirement planning firm. We help retirees retire financially, and we help them retire with purpose. And when he said that, I was like, done. Like, it was immediately gone. I know it's hard because we all have very strong opinions over what's happening in the world, one way or the other. But that can't infiltrate into our marketing for sure. And in a small town like this, man, I mean, if you, by the way, if you follow me if we're friends on Facebook, I have been silent for a long time. There's a reason I have been silent, is because at the end of the day, it is going to do very little in the way of positivity towards probably me personally, but especially to this business. And so we have to stick to the script, having political conversations, using any type of marketing for your small business, a huge no-no. I remember Michael Hyatt, I follow him on Twitter, and this is back before the 2016 election. He came out and said, he's like, don't ever talk about politics. Never talk about politics. And about 2 days later, he made some political statement on his Twitter, and I actually retweeted it and was like, I remember like last Tuesday, you just said you shouldn't say anything political. And he tweeted me right back and just said, busted, ... busted. And I think that holds true. There's a time and a place for a political conversation, but when it comes to your small business and marketing, probably not. I think you got to focus on keeping your opinions to yourself. And again, I'm talking marketing, small business, small town regions. There's a time and a place for that. I don't feel that that's the place for that. So you got to build content, but you got to stick to the script and just always make sure you're adding value. I think
that advice, Jerrid, rings true. Like, it's timely advice for sure, but it's also just evergreen advice in a sense, because we are in a small town, and if you got to stick to, like you guys said, you establish that guiding light. That's what leads the way. And no matter what the state of the rest of the world, that's what should push your content.
And that doesn't mean that you don't talk about coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that it never gets brought up. But how can I add value in the midst of what we're going through that reinforces my brand? And that's where it clicked for me, where I was like, full disclosure, I was like, we should get the mayor on the phone. Let's get the mayor on the phone and let's pop some questions to him. And honestly, no kidding, there's a part of me personally that wants to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what is that going to look like to the public? You probably get some people who are like, yeah, get them, and but man, you just have to look at the risk reward. And I got to be honest, there's a lot of people that I see online, spouting off opinions, and I don't really care to see it. So I don't know why people would want to see my view either. You know what I'm saying? And there's not. I would think, just full disclosure too, I'm opinionated, so I don't know how I could have a conversation and just stick to the middle ground. I don't know how I could keep myself out of that conversation. And at the end of the day, it doesn't reinforce our brand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a no. And so take that for what it's worth in your business.
And I think, in a bigger city with a bigger population, if you wanted to put a flag in the sand and spout that off, there's a large enough pool of people that you'll probably be okay and might even help you. But like in a small town,
mm-hmm.
You don't have the population to, everyone knows everyone. You can't hide. And as soon as you alienate people, it's over. Everyone knows.
It was really interesting because when I lived in the Twin Cities on Kare 11, we lived in Maple Grove. My public profile was high, but I feel like I could hide. I still kind of had a private life. Now I work at Taatjes Financial Group in Wilmer. So my celebrity status, which I'm using air quotes for the people who can't hear me, is low. But I don't feel I have the cover that I had even working in the media. It's a weird conundrum that I think plays into this whole conversation that we're having.
Right. And in a small town, again, it's not transactional. Trust is more important than anything, because you lose a customer, there's not 7 people waiting in line that you could go get.
And at the end of the day, if somebody's a fan of you, they're already a fan.
Right.
They don't need to hear your political view to be a bigger fan. You've already got them.
Yes.
You can continue to turn them into a super fan by other ways. And so you need to take that in consideration. And by the way, I'm not calling out anybody. I'm not calling out anybody in this community. I don't from a business standpoint, I don't see, and I don't follow everybody, and I'm not on it all the time, probably as much as you guys are, and I'm not speaking to anybody directly here. I will say though, there is a fitness professional that I'm friends with, and she doesn't live anywhere near here, but her brand is fitness videos, healthy ways, and she has a passion for a particular social issue, and she does not help but comment all the time. And she would, and I never said a word, but she would get messaged by other people saying, just again, stick to the script. And she's like, well, let me tell you something. I got this big platform. I'm going to use it to, fight this social injustice, which I can't disagree that opinion. Just don't do it on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about LeBron James back when we were doing the shut up and dribble stuff. Remember that happened.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron James had a political view, and he was getting bashed by one side saying, just shut up and dribble. There's a time and a place to have that conversation. I don't think anybody's going to knock you for having an opinion. I don't think anybody's even going to knock you for stating that opinion. I think where you get this kind of weirdness is when you're using the NBA's platform to spout a certain opinion. I think that's probably where that line could be drawn. And I'm not saying I'm drawing that line. I'm just saying where that line could be drawn. So how does that apply to us? You can have your opinion. There's a time and a place for that. But if you start bringing that in, if you start weaving that into your marketing efforts, especially in small business here in Wilmington, Minnesota, I just can't see how that's going to play out very well for you.
I think the mathematics are pretty simple. Is the people that you, just like you mentioned, the people that already support you, they support you, and they'd probably be okay with you saying something because they probably align with regards to values. But then at worst, the rest of the people hopefully are just neutral. They don't know you that well.
Right.
So there's neutral. Why go and make enemies that weren't there?
Right.
Why go and do this and add enemies to that whole? I'd rather just stay neutral with the people that don't know me and positive with the people that do like me. And why take the risk of adding enemies?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know why you would do that.
Now you could say, well, I've got a strong opinion about this, so I'm going to go out. I'm not going to be afraid to say it. I don't disagree with you. I think there are certain topics that need to be talked about. I think that there's certain rights that you should stand up for. Whatever your thing is. But we're talking about marketing here. I mean, that's what this podcast is about.
Right.
So in context to small business and marketing, no. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
Because people could, for what you just said, people could come to me and say, like, well, Jerrid, you believe in this and you have strong faith and blah, blah, blah. You need to be out there. That's a different conversation.
Right.
That's a different conversation for a different podcast in a different context. But in context of small business, marketing, small rural communities, I wouldn't do it.
Yep, I agree. Well, thank you, Jerrid. Any other bullet points that we missed?
No, that's all I had. I wasted you guys' time enough. So.
No, you did not waste any time.
One final question.
Sure.
Fine.
To kind of tie it back full circle. One thing I love about Taatjes and what you guys are doing as far as marketing is like you really are hitting all of like the content pillars. You've got, coming at people from voice, perspective, podcast, radio. You've got written content. You've got photos. You've got videos out there. So your marketing is awesome. But like, what's coming up next? Because I feel like you're such a creative guy, Jerrid. What kind of new and innovative ideas do you guys have in the works? If you could. Sure. Share any.
Well, I appreciate that compliment. I do listen to what you guys say because I do watch you guys as well. So I try to just follow along. I'm an old guy, so keep up with the kids here nowadays. But like one thing through this whole coronavirus is that the one thing that stopped is that I was booked solid. Not to take a silly reference off of my guy, but my schedule was full with speaking gigs March through April. And that came to an end literally overnight. I mean, every time my phone dinged, it was like cancel. And I realized just how much of just even my personal purpose and how I bring value to Taatjes Financial Group is going out and doing speaking engagements and teaching sessions. That's how I help kind of stir up a little activity and a little chatter. You know what I'm saying? And so just this week, we talked about, since you can't go out and actually speak, you need to be doing more videos. And that's probably one leg that has probably been missing. And I'm the one that goes and teaches and preaches on video a bit. So that's kind of egg on my face. But starting actually today, in fact, one of the conversations I have after we get done recording is to reach out to some of my friends that are more experts in lighting and stuff. And how can I turn this office into just a little mini studio, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. But this whole thing has helped me, or this kind of with coronavirus and whatnot, has helped kind of push us over to the edge to say, one of the things you do every week is this, and this, but then put out just a quick, 3 to 5 minute video on the things that you're passionate about that maybe aren't just exactly financial. And again, it fits because probably one thing that we don't do consistently is just a cool little video clip here and there. So that's kind of a good thing that's come out of coronavirus.
Cool.
And the hard thing is video is it's a lot of post work. I mean, it's a tough one.
Yeah, out of all of the options, it's definitely the most time consuming, which is why people, push it.
Yep. In an ideal world, you can't see, you're seeing this beautiful background here, wall, but on the other side of the camera here is a bunch of open space. And there's a reason why it's a bunch of open space is because I like to turn this into just a mock studio. And so the biggest thing for me, whenever I do a video, I would spend more time setting up cameras and lights and cords than I would actually spend shooting. I mean, if in a perfect world, I just kind of come in like the overpaid talent and everything's set up and I put a mic on and I read my lines and I walk away. And, by the end of the day, there's a video out there, and that doesn't work in small business and it doesn't work here. But at the very least, I need to have a setup where I can it's just a go-to. It's already set up and it's consistent. And basically all I got to do is put a mic on, put a card in the camera, turn the lights on, hit record, and be ready to go. Now that doesn't take into account the editing and all that stuff, but at the very least, if I can eliminate my setup time, pre-set up, that's going to help me out. So that's literally on my list of to-dos today.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen on the post side is the first one you make is going to take the longest. The second one will be quicker. And then by video 15, you've got your workflow down, and that's actually the time when you could look to offload it when you've got a system you can teach someone else, or you just stay more efficient yourself. Yeah.
I've just found now my weekly duties every week, host and produce a 15-minute radio segment, host and produce a podcast, turn both of those into blogs. Those things have to happen every week.
Yep.
And I just, now granted I've been doing this for a while, but I think maybe not even that long ago, those 4 things right there would have taken up most of my week.
For sure.
So I'm assuming, right, especially if you can get the setup and the rhythm going, video is going to be the exact same way. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Well, thanks, Jerrid.
Yep, just make sure if you got any questions, let me know. Just make sure you tag me on this stuff. So this is good.
Absolutely.
Good content you guys are putting out. Not many people around here are talking about. Not many people are talking about it in the area in general, especially not here. So it's good.
We are being very, very self-serving and trying to accelerate that conversation.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Forever Game Podcast as much as we enjoyed creating it. And I have a question for you. Do you like your social media marketing? If you're an individual or a business and you don't love the content you put out, let us help you. We love doing this stuff. We would love to give you advice. We would love to help you execute. Whatever it is you need, we want to be there to help you. Creating content for social media and marketing on social media should be fun. Let us help you do that. If you or someone you know needs help with their social media marketing, we would love, just love, if you sent them our name. We hope to talk to you soon. Stay safe. Peace.